This farm bill really fits well with the overall Ripon Society's vision of how government should do. Jim gave us a quote from Eisenhower, only 70 plus years ago almost, and not a whole lot's changed in terms of the overall tenor and tone. Production agriculture's got this weird relationship with the American people. You and I as consumers who eat every day are obviously dependent on that. And the producers are dependent on great agricultural policy. And in general, there's a lot of mystery, a mystique, a romance about farming that for the uninitiated, the folks who want to grow up in cities, the plowing, all that kind of stuff, until it comes to trying to put policy in place. You've all seen that Paul Harvey video about the farmer who's not crying by the time you see that darn thing. And yet we can't convert that kind of empathy for the people who work so hard every single day to feed us into good policy. And we've got guys who would unwind it completely. We had one of the amendments made in order on purpose. Was McClintock's amendment to unwind the policy entirely. We beat him 10-1 on that deal. It's surprising that they got 34 votes, but it just goes to show you that there are folks out there that are just way off the reservation when it comes to what happened. This breakfast this morning costs less than anywhere else in the world. And the reason for that is that, one, they do a good job buying, but no, the production agriculture does produce for the American consumer the most affordable food supply of any developed nation in the world. It's their hard work, their risk-taking, their reliance on credit and everything else, but also a safety net that we need to keep in place that keeps them in place during these hard times. Who in here has suffered a 50% drop in net income in the last 5 years? Every farmer out there has. Well, not everyone, but most of them. 50% drop in net farm income. He's a cattle guy, so he's been living it. There are hard times in production agriculture right now. When Frank did the bill in 14, times were good. They had good yields, good rains, commodity prices were really good. Immediately after he got his deal signed, commodity prices tanked. I don't know if there's any cause and effect there, but quite frankly, they've been down for 5 years, and there's no prospect that they're going up. So we've got to have good agricultural policy in place in order to make sure that the national security aspects of us being able to feed ourselves, the good hard-working men out there, and rural America, quite frankly, is where those core values that have sustained, built, and sustained this country are in safekeeping. They're lost in the big cities. And they occasionally, every once in a while, will emerge, a bit of an outbreak, like an Ebola outbreak, someplace in a big city. But the core values that this country is founded on are only in safekeeping in rural America. We've got to keep rural America vibrant. And by extension, we've got to have a good production agriculture industry, profitable industry in order to make that happen. I was looking at some of the things that you guys talk about in your objectives. Strengthen the American family, protect safety and future of our children. GT's going to talk about that a little bit, what we're doing to try to and what Kevin Brady started yesterday afternoon in Ways and Means. That's what we're trying to, that's what the nutrition title is about, is helping people get back on their own feet, making their own money, making their own decisions, taking care of their own families, and then contributing back to public assistance for other people. So again, this bill fits right in with that core value you have. Promote and achieve an innovative and effective educational system. The land-grant schools, extension service, is the envy of the entire world. Any place you go in the world, and if you try to talk to folks about how you communicate, particularly on the education side for ag, there's no place that doesn't look to our system to say, man, I wish we could replicate that. I wish we could have a school system like that cord in the land-grant schools where the work is done, and then it goes into every county has extension services folks that are out of that deal. So good linkage up there. Improve and protect the health and safety of the American people and the natural environment in which we live. There's no better conservationists out there than the American farmer and rancher. It's their land. They want to hand it off to that next generation of their family better than they got it. They're not interested in raping and pillaging the land or screwing up the streams and waters and the air, polluting it. That's not what they're about. They are trying to make money, and they're trying to do those other things to protect the environment in a rational kind of way. And sometimes our regulatory scheme gets in the way of them being able to do the things that are best for hard-working men and women. But our conservation title that Frank will talk a little bit about here in a second speaks to much of that issue that you guys are concerned about. Advanced participation in and develop a sound and growing economy. How many of you eat at least once a day? There you go. We're not going to have a developing economy if we're not feeding each other and making that happen. And that's the core value, the core scheme of what's about with production agriculture. And by the way, when you go to the grocery store and hit this restaurant, whatever, you get a deal. Now, we don't know we get a deal because we love getting deals. We don't know it. and we don't know why. It's the American farmer and rancher, those good, hard-working men and women who, by the way, a 20-hour work week, they think that's the second or third job their family's working in order to try to keep the farm alive. So they are not particularly sympathetic about us forcing a 20-hour work week minimum on folks who are getting public assistance. So, and then assure a strong national defense. Clearly, food security is a national defense issue because, as Bush said, a country that feeds itself is more secure than one that has to depend on imported foods from other places. So we think our farm bill fits within your core scheme of what you're trying to get done with the organization, and look forward to your questions, look forward to your help. And are you going to introduce GT? Okay, Frank, thanks. Look forward to your questions.
Next, we have the good fortune to hear from Congressman Lucas. And I would say that in today's environment, you're probably the most sympathetic guy in the room, given your history with farm bill shenanigans. So we're delighted to have you here and offer you the opportunity to make some comments, please.
Absolutely, thank you. And if I could make my comments from the chair, the chairman did an outstanding job of laying out the lay of the land and the things that we face. If you bear with me for just a moment, let's think about how we got to this point. From the founding of the Republic until the 1930s, federal farm policy primarily consisted of the Homestead Act of 1862, the Morrow Act of 1862, both signed into law by President Lincoln, which, by the way, created the first opportunity for free public education in the world at a college level, the land-grant university system. We did the Ag Research Service in the late 1800s, the Farm Extension Service in 1914. Those were essentially the programs: education, distribution of knowledge. The changes in agriculture in the world after the First World War through the 20s and into the 30s, and in the Great Drought in the Southern Plains, led to an effort to create, for the first time in the late 20s, early 30s, a comprehensive farm bill to address all these various issues, to bring them together. It took several failed efforts, and ultimately the 1933 Act was passed, the Agricultural Adjustment Act. Supreme Court a few years later threw it out because of the way it was funded. But essentially from 1933 to 1996, federal farm policy was all about supply management, supply control. The old efficiency payment system set a floor, which would barely keep you from starving, but the government from 33 to 1996 owned massive stocks of product. So if prices got too high, they opened the floodgates up and dumped the grain out, dumped the products out onto the market. So they set a lid, trapping farmers in this narrow band. 1996, the Republican Revolution, the first Republican Farm Bill, truly, called at the time the Freedom to Farm Act. We stepped away from supply management. We stepped away from supply control. We basically said to farmers, farm what you want. And from 96 until 2014, we used something called the fixed annual payment or the market transition payment, providing a safety net so that producers could weather tough times, and acknowledging that we needed to make the investment to always have a sufficient supply of food and fiber on hand, but getting away from federal management. By 2012, it became obvious that that was no longer politically sustainable. And that launched us into what took 2.5 years that ultimately became the 2014 Farm Bill. Stepping away from federal supply controls, stepping away from the old fixed annual payments, and going to a concept of using insurance, where a producer would decide how much coverage he or she wanted, whether for price, and then paying a premium for it, in the assumption that if everything was perfect, just like I remind my wife about my life insurance policy, you're not getting anything out of that payment this year, dear. But ultimately having the backstop there, Hayden, I don't stand in crowds of Freedom Caucus people by myself. Anyway, moving in that direction. But it took us 2.5 years to accomplish that. Why? Because forces outside of agriculture, outside of the Ag Committee, played huge mischief with us. The kind of mischief that Chairman Conaway is dealing with now. But ultimately we passed the bill, we moved forward, and with prices now basically half what they were in 2014, there's stability and calm out in the countryside. The safety net has worked. But those programs begin to unravel at the end of September. If we don't write a new bill, extend a bill, if we don't take action, it begins to unravel. I would suggest to you that one of the biggest challenges, and I know in questions we'll get down into the nitty-gritty, one of the biggest problems my wonderful successor has faced is slightly different than the problem I faced, because the assault in 12 and 13 and 14 was going at ag policy. Chairman Conaway's kind of a drive-by shooting. He's caught up politically. He's caught up in a situation where, in my opinion, for what that's worth, because of this struggle over immigration, our moderate friends are on the verge, they say, of successfully forcing a vote using a discharge petition. On the verge of is the key phrase. My very conservative friends are infuriated by that and trying to push back. So they've reached out and grabbed the one bill that our speaker has a legacy item in that's on the floor now. The speaker is very, very focused on the work and education requirements in SNAP, which is good policy. But our Freedom Caucus friends have figured out that's the Achilles heel to go after him. So once again, we're caught up in a struggle where the committee has done good work. In normal times, it would be a bill that would blow through with ease, but because the Democrats realize that this is a very competitive November, and they view work and education requirements as an issue more difficult for them to handle within their base than we Republicans, they won't support it. We're being jammed over other issues that aren't relevant to us, so it's going to make for a wild June. On the conservation title and forestry that I have the honor and privilege of chairing the subcommittee under Chairman Conaway, conservation programs. We're still going to continue the effort to aggressively protect the air, water quality, wildlife. There's some debate about how many acres of CRP land there should be going on. We fold CSP conservation program into EQIP. The wonderful thing about Chairman Conaway's negotiations, I had $23 billion less to spend. The chairman managed to maneuver things so that he doesn't have any new money, but he doesn't have any cuts. You're a pretty good negotiator, boss. And that makes life simpler. So you see in conservation a number of things reallocated to try and maximize the impact of the dollars that are available to us. Will we get this done? Well, as Mike noted very politely earlier, I kid him on a regular basis that on my schedule, he still has 2 years to go. So he's way ahead. It won't take 2 years. It may be just as painful. Chairman, you're going to get her done. You're going to get her done. And with that, I look forward to my fellow subcommittee chairman and your questions shortly.
Thank you, Congressman Lucas. Congressman Thompson, as both your colleagues have mentioned already, the nutrition title is one of the trickier parts of the engagement that you have been working on, and certainly it's one of the important things for the Food Marketing Institute. I've had the opportunity to testify a couple of times during the hearings and appreciated the chance to share our perspectives. Talk to us a little bit, if you would, about how you've navigated that.
Sure will, and thank you so much. Let me start, first of all, Frank, instead of a drive-by shooting, it was more like a mugging. It was just a handful of folks who normally aren't relevant, and they jumped right on, so we're going to fix that. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here. It really is a privilege and honor to be here and to always just really appreciate the society and what just your perspectives, your values, your support. I also appreciate these two gentlemen. I've had the opportunity to serve in the shadows of two great chairmen during my 10 years on the Agriculture Committee. Started out chairing the Conservation and Forestry. Frank, Chairman Lucas, just really appreciated his confidence with that. And I started out my first 2 years. I was pleased to do that, serving as chairman. It's got a place called No Trees, Texas. The chair of the Forestry Subcommittee was pretty impressive, just the fact that he acknowledged it, and he was a big supporter. And then I was really honored at the beginning of the last term, a year and a half ago, when he came to me and asked me to serve as vice chair of the Agriculture Committee, which I thought was great, and then asked me to chair the Nutrition Subcommittee. At which point I just took a deep breath because unfortunately we know that the nutrition title has been a target. I'm pleased to say I don't think we had amendments, at least none were for the separation of the nutrition title, and I think that speaks to our success of the full committee and the work of the subcommittee. of what we've done with not just putting together great policy, but messaging. And if there's a one single word that I would have to pick that describes the 2018 Farm Bill, and it's not limited to the nutrition title, it's conservation, it's forestry, there's many other parts, it's transformational. You know, you can always, I mean, I can't outspend some of my colleagues that I serve with. And that doesn't always, the more money you spend doesn't mean you have effective policy, and sometimes it doesn't mean you're achieving outcomes at all. But to be transformational in terms of how we approach policy, that's the true art of legislating. And that's what we've accomplished with this Farm Bill. And in the nutrition title specifically that I want to share a little bit with you. You know, nutrition matters, and farmers feed. There's not a calorie that is delivered in terms of nutritional support for families and individuals who are experiencing food insecurity that isn't grown by a farmer and a farm family someplace. And so I tell people, I illustrate how important of this is my values, this is my belief on the nutrition title. I talk about how it's been about a month and a half ago. I got a call about 11:30 at night that my cousin's house was on fire. Now, unfortunately, we weren't home. Like in this job, we're frequently not home. So one place we're not very often. We were on the job here. And my cousin's married to one of my best friends, and they don't live too far from me. And somebody called and said, hey, across from the VFW, there's a house that's on fire, and there's a ton of fire. Well, there's only two houses over there. It's either my brother and sister-in-law's or my cousin and my best friend. And it turned out it was their house. And so I assure you, having been a member of that volunteer fire department for 30 years or more, that as they were just lucky to get out of the house. I mean, it was just a bizarre fire. They crawled out underneath the flames. It went up that quick. And by the way, my best friend's a former fire chief, so he knew, unfortunately, the irony there. And he's standing outside. The fire department, volunteer men and women in the fire department are on scene. They're as they're putting water on this, they are surrounded by friends and loved ones and perfect strangers who are all there coming, and they're providing them clothing, first of all, because they escaped in their pajamas, and money and love and support, and just, I mean, perfect straight. It was just, it's just what happens in rural America. See, to me, that's a value of rural America, that neighbors help neighbors in need. That's what the nutrition title is. Nutrition title is neighbors helping neighbors in need, and we need the right policy to do that. And I think we've come to that policy. We've navigated this in a way. I'm very appreciative of that. I've been through two farm bills. They've both been good experiences. And this farm bill has been very transparent. Over 80 witnesses, close to 24 hearings over the course of, well, now we're going up on the 4 years. And so it's been a great transparent process. And so the provisions that are in there are really designed to be transformational. The purpose of the nutrition title is not to sustain the cottage industry of the folks who provide it. It's not to sustain, it's not to, to sustain the bureaucracy behind food security. The purpose of the farm title is to provide food security, to provide a pathway to food security. And so we've done that in some pretty incredible ways. I think that, of the 37% of the individuals who find themselves in a situation where they receive, are eligible by income and by asset test to provide, to receive SNAP support, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. By the way, it's not food stamps. We haven't had food stamps in a very long time. It's SNAP. And, but it's what used to be food stamps. And these are individuals who are between the ages of 18 and 59. These are folks who are not disabled. These are people who do not have at home individuals that are preschool children or individuals with disabilities that need someone to be in a kind of a caregiver, attendant role position. So these are work-capable people. And we want them to have food security. So we want them to have SNAP benefits. But at the same time, if you really want to provide somebody true, long-term, ultimate food security, you need to give them a pathway to opportunity. And the timing of this, I don't think we couldn't have done this in the last Farm Bill because we were in the middle of tremendous unemployment at that point. And that's the beauty of 2018 right now. I mean, we were not supposed to be, now, one of my other passions is career and technical education training. It just kind of, I don't know if you had foresight or just worked out. It's better sometimes to be lucky than good. Okay. And so, yeah, I have a bill that's pending in the Senate that Senator Alexander 2 weeks ago told me that they're going to move now. It passed unanimously out of the House and off the Education Workforce Committee to reform career and technical education training. And we estimate, when that bill was debated, we said that there were going to be 6 million job openings by the year 2020. A month ago, we hit 6.5 million jobs open. The peeling away of regulations that we've done, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we are exponentially increasing the number of jobs, and there's a skills gap today. So the timing for the Farm Bill is just absolutely perfect. And we're going to create a job training slot. This is not new dollars. We were able to do this within the limitations that we had financially. That includes case management for individuals that fit within that category, like it's 18 to 59, not responsible for a preschool child or someone with a disability. And it's very creative. We're not creating new bureaucracy either. That's the best part. I serve with people I work with. We wouldn't stand. We've got enough government to contend with. We know that things work more efficiently if we can trim that and we can tighten the belt on government. So we're going to be able to do things as simple as if you're an employer and you've been struggling and looking for a qualified and trained worker, we're going to do supportive employment. So somebody who's living in poverty, maybe somebody who's been in intergenerational poverty, so long that they can't even remember why their family went into poverty to begin with, but they show up under this program because they're on SNAP. They have the impetus to either work 20 hours a week, engage in job training, or what I like to call skills-based education for 20 hours a week, or quite frankly, if they are in a city, high unemployment area, places where it have very challenging, they could do this through volunteer work as well. Now that's not as good, but quite frankly, it works on the soft skills, getting out of bed in the morning, showing up on time, networking, because we know through networking, that's how we find opportunities. And so that is an alternative that's out there as well that doesn't get talked about very much. And so, but one of those could be going to, and we're working with existing partners too. Every state has, in Pennsylvania we call them career links or one-stops. They're a part of the Workforce Investment Act, or the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act is what we kind of renamed it with the last reauthorization. About 20% of what we invest in this actually goes to that existing infrastructure to help people, connect people with jobs. But it could be community college, it could be going to unions, apprenticeship programs, journeyman programs, or it could go showing up on day one at an employer who's desperately looking for somebody who's qualified and trained. And we provide some minimal job support, allows them to get on-the-job training, with the goal of once they've shown they've mastered the competencies and the skills, those employers who desperately need good employees are going to hire or will continue to employ them. They'll pick up the bill, and once they master those competencies, we suspect the wages are going to rise because of what they've achieved. And we're not talking 4-year degrees, we're not talking 6-year degrees, we're talking about being qualified and trained. And so that's the other thing that we do that's transformational. And we can't talk enough about this. There are more people living in poverty today than when the Great Society created all the welfare programs, which just shows you that's failed. That's a failed system. And part of it is the institutionalization. I think that those programs are designed to help people feel almost like an anesthetic effect, to feel comfortable living in poverty, which is not the American way. The American way is greater opportunity. And so what we do with the Farm Bill is that we actually take the first stab at the first movement to address these. In this country today, it doesn't matter how little income you have. If you happen to own a vehicle that's worth more than $4,650, you're not eligible for food security support. Now, if it's worth $4,650, you're good. You can get it. But if it's $4,651, we pull the rug right out from underneath you. It's called the poverty cliff. We complain about Americans not saving enough, yet we punish the most vulnerable because we have limitations on how much you can have in assets. We changed that. We increased those amounts from the 1960s and we index it to inflation because we want to encourage people to work their way out of poverty. We want to create a glide path to opportunity. And I'm very proud to say that that upward mobility movement, that's kind of how we've described it, the first effective approach on this is the Agriculture Committee. Yeah. And so there's a whole lot more beyond that within the nutrition title. I hope you'll check it out and appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. I have pages of questions here, but I think it's probably only fair to open it up to all of you to see if any of you have questions. Yes.
So we'll love to get your take on the immigration issue, since that is foundational to getting the Farm Bill done. The adage of, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. They're talking about now a DACA border. Is there a chance, and would it be beneficial to have something on immigration for ag workers as part of this immigration deal that could then free up the Farm Bill?
So in addition to good ag policy, all of us who interact with farmers and ranchers, that's the number one thing, is a good workforce. If you're a dairyman, you've got to have folks 7 days a week. Slaughterhouses have got to have folks all the time. Row crop folks have coming and going, but a proper ag worker program makes a lot of sense. There is some risk for the folks who hijacked the Farm Bill over immigration. If they are a part of jettisoning one piece of the immigration debate, the production agriculture really wants, and that's his worker program that Goodland Scott in this deal that I've been working with and others have been working with him on. If they force that off that bill, then they'll get a double black eye for having hijacked the deal. So I'm hopeful that those folks see that and that they will be supportive of maintaining that. Now, the other thing about internal enforcement, E-Verify is one of the mandatory E-Verify, be one of the best tools for internal enforcement, where you can't go there without an ag worker program first that transitions across that spectrum, so that when E-Verify hits, these workers, these production guys out there, production agriculture folks, have their workforce transition into whatever that new program looks like. So, for my money, this is probably the one immigration bill that's going to leave the station that's going to get the president's desk anytime soon, and we must have that ag worker program on there. So that'll be our comments. But production agriculture is desperate for folks who want to work those jobs. Student labor, outside, hard work. Americans have shown throughout this entire string of high unemployment era, that they don't want to do those jobs. So a good worker program is essential to maintaining production agriculture. And there's not a group out there of Americans collectively who pay more attention to what happens on the House floor and men and women in production agriculture. Their livelihoods are linked and expertly linked to ag policy. So they were watching last Friday when all that happened. So they're not happy campers. And getting that ag piece of part of the immigration thing would help soothe put a little salve on it for those folks who should not have voted no, but did.
And I just hope our friends who made this requirement, if a vote is what was agreed to late night to be done in June, and that fulfills the requirement, I hope they remember that. Or if something passes, I hope they understand that consideration is what they agreed to. Sometimes, as I think leadership will tell you, if you're really pressing hard, there are a few of our friends in the House conference who are moving targets on what they meant or what they need or what they want. So let's hope that's not the case this time.